In this video, we are going to be talking about the 1976 Hitchcock film, which was his last feature film, Family Plot. This one starred the great Bruce Dern, Karen Black, Barbara Harris, and William Devane. And my guest today is Dr. Marc Strauss, who is the co-host at the upcoming Hitchcock Conference, HitchCon, which will take place on October 1st to the 3rd. The link is in the description box below where you can get details and tickets to that. It's an online conference. And he is the author of Alfred Hitchcock's silent films, Hitchcock's Objects as Subjects, The Significance of Things on Screen, and most recently, Discovering Musicals, a liberal arts guide to stage and screen. So Marc, thanks so much again for joining me today.
My pleasure, Robert. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. My pleasure. I'm curious, before we kick off and talk about Family Plot, where did your fascination for Hitchcock start? When did it start for you?
Gosh, probably like everybody. I don't remember the specific film, but you know, when I was in my teens, I'm sure I saw Psycho, The Birds, you know, those pop out. And, you know, like any fascination, you know, you sort of latch on to things that continue to interest you over time. And I just kept going back to his films because it's like a deep well. Every time you go back, there's something else to see. And it sort of snowballed, and I maintained my interest in Hitchcock while I pursued my career in dance and musical theater.
Yeah.
And now that I'm retired, I'm able to, you know, fixate on the fun stuff.
No, absolutely. And what got you interested in writing these books on Hitchcock? I mean, it's interesting to me when I see people writing books after there's so much that has been written on Hitchcock, but there's always something. I mean, even this conference that you and Joel put together, we don't think of the love stories in Hitchcock. You know, we think of the murders and the suspense and the thrillers, but there's always something to focus on. So what was it that wasn't written about that you thought this needs to be talked about?
Well, before my Hitchcock silent films book came out, you know, Charles Barr had done Hitchcock's British films, and there wasn't that much on the silence. And so back in the 2000s, that intrigued me, and they were just becoming more accessible. In fact, I took a trip to the British Film Institute because that was the only place I could see a couple of those. And I remember hand spooling them onto, you know, 8 tracks. And
oh, wow.
hand cranking them, you know, these silent films, because that was the only place I could find them. I think I found a copy of The Pleasure Garden at the Dallas Museum. And so God. I was, you know, invested in tracking those down just for myself. And I thought, well, let's compile my notes. And so that's where that came about. Hitchcock's, I wanted to write a book called Hitchcock's Worst Films and Why They're So Good.
I like that.
But my publisher, you know, said, oh, well, you know, we can sell it better if it's called Hitchcock Nonetheless, the master's touch in his least celebrated films. And, you know, I didn't fight hard. I didn't fight hard enough. So that was my second Hitchcock book because, you know, like the silent films, the films that hadn't been seen that often, that were critically panned,
right,
appealed to me next. It was like, well, let's try to give some credit to those. And then, even though people have talked about objects on screen, I was fascinated with Hitchcock's use of them, placement in the frame, right. And so that snowballed. That became a feature for my third book. And now that I'm retired, I'm working on number 4.
Oh, wow.
And it's all about how Hitchcock manipulates his audience. my working title, I think, is Pushing Back Slightly, Hitchcock's Audience as Protagonist.
Ah, well,
So,
I look forward to those. I mean, it's interesting that the silent films, even like 20 years ago, you could barely, as you said, you could barely find, and now they're, you know, a click of a button, you can pretty much access any of them. So that's really interesting. So looking at Family Plot, this is his, you know, last feature film in 1976. This is one that's less talked about compared to most of his other, you know, well-known film. What, after watching it again, what did you think of it this time around?
well, you know, like I said before we went live, what's your favorite film? Well, it's the one I'm watching now. And so, you know, I just rewatched it like you did. And it's, you know, there's so many cool things that connect to other films.
Mm-hmm.
It's light and fluffy, a little bit like To Catch a Thief, but, you know, it's got that subplot going on. It's, you know, the story of two couples whose lives parallel each other, and the notion of doubles, you know, is reminiscent of Strangers on a Train,
Right.
And Shadow of a Doubt and others. There's all kinds of fun connections and typical Hitchcockian elements that are pleasing to revisit.
No, you're absolutely right. That's true. And, you know, as much as, you know, when I've read about it, or, you know, people talk about the parallel that the couples were so different, but at the same time, they have certain things that are alike, you know, like they both have these fronts. I mean, they have the jewelry store, which is a front for the fact that they were, you know, kidnapping people to hold ransoms to get jewels. And then, and of course, Barbara Harris she's passing herself off as a psychic, even though it's all fake. And Bruce Dern, as her boyfriend, is a cab driver, but really he's almost a detective doing all this research so she can do these fake seances. So as much as they're so not alike at all, their relationships are so different, everything is the behavior is so different, but yet at the same time they have those things in common.
yeah, absolutely true. And again, it's surface versus substance.
Mm-hmm.
So many of Hitchcock's characters are playing a role throughout his films.
That's true.
And as you point out, you know, here they all have fronts. You know, Dern plays is a cab driver, but he's also this detective, and he's got that stupid Sherlock Holmes pipe that he carries around with him. You know, that's a stupid in-joke. And then he plays a lawyer later. They're always acting. And I found both couples also somewhat similar. You know, it's 1976. It's a little bit after, you know, the Summer of Love. There's sort of this openness to relationships that is often reflected in the 70s and early 80s films. And, you know, both couples' banter is a mix of edgy and fun and even abrasive. And then Bruce, George Lumley, and Blanche, you know, have all those double entendres, you know. Stop grabbing me by my crystal balls. You know?
Right, I love that.
And give me a hint so that we can have a little foreplay here. You know, it's just, and I know I'm gonna have a standing ovation tonight. It's just straight out of the 60s, 70s. You know, sex entendres. So, but the two couples, they kind of have similar banter. So So they have similarities as well as differences, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I love that Barbara Harris was there's sort of that great scene on the front porch where, I mean, and it's almost like they used to do before the rating system came in, when everything was so coded. And he has it when they're talking, she's basically saying, yeah, she wants to have sex, and he's basically, I'm too pooped to pop, you know. I love that. I just thought it's
What do you hold it? What are you waiting for, honey?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be any use to you tonight. Oh,
Yeah.
that's all you think about.
That was great, you know. And then every now and then, you know, he would have some cursing, but it was almost like the old days with the coding. And I also like that. And, you know, again, he's sort of taking those cliches and spinning them on their head of the people role playing in movies. But, you know, every now and then Bruce Dern's like, I got to go to work. I can't do this today. You know, I thought that was so great. You forget that he's actually a regular guy who has to go to work, and I'll do this the day after tomorrow. I've got to, and I thought that was, you know, I just love those little details like that, which on the first viewing, I don't remember them standing out as much. I remember when I first saw it, I thought it was all right. I thought it was kind of corny. But then when you watch it again and you really kind of lean into let those details sort of wash over, you really see the fun, the tongue-in-cheekness, you know, at the same time, as fun as it may be, they all really have no feeling for anyone. I mean, even those people when is it Maloney when he crashes the car and dies and he falls off the cliff, and even those teenagers in the car are like, let's get out of here, you know, not even to think to stop to call the cops or anything. And it was the same with William Devane's character. When he finds out Maloney dies, he's known this guy since he was a kid, and he just doesn't care. You know, he doesn't care at all. And you know, if you have front, if you're a psychic, a fake psychic, then they just don't care that they're ripping people off. I mean, he always has these characters that you feel guilty after that you're laughing because you forget that they are actually criminals.
Yeah, Lumley, after he's nearly killed, you know, he's more interested in getting the reward money. You know, these all of Hitchcock's characters none of them are black and white. They all, you know, the heroes, so-called, all have, you know, real tragic flaws, and the villains, you know, maybe have some. Like Devane is smooth and charming, but oily is all get out. You know, he's a little weasel, but he's so cool, and Devane plays him beautifully. You know, again,
he was so great. I just love his voice. He's such a great voice. I'm actually surprised. I mean, he's had a great career, but when I think about him, I think of this and Marathon Man. I mean, he did a lot of TV. I don't know him as well. I mean, he's been in, like I said, a ton of stuff, but he's not someone that from the 70s that perhaps comes to mind like Dern does, or Karen Black, or De Niro. You know, it's interesting to me that. But how did you think of the other performances, Karen Black and Barbara Harris and Dern? What did you think that was good choices? They weren't the first choice, as we know. Yeah.
Generally, you know, Hitchcock always finds a way, I think, to take advantage of the actors he either is able to choose or is stuck with. I know he wanted Dern, who to this day is always fascinating on screen, because you never quite know what you're going to get with Dern. He's always in the moment. He's got this wonderful, quirky spontaneity. Yeah. And, you know, both him and Devane are still working. You know, Dern's 85 now, and he was just in Once Upon a Time in America, you know, with Tarantino. So I thought him and Devane were great. I always liked Karen Black.
Me too.
I remember her in Richard Rush's The Stuntman. Oh, fabulous in that. If you haven't seen that lately,
I haven't. No, it sounds familiar though.
Yeah, with Peter O'Toole.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, and Steve Railsback, great movie. Richard Rush. If you like Hitchcock, look his films up. He hasn't done many, but you know, as much as I've read that Hitch loved Barbara Harris, she was quirky. You know,
she was great,
intelligent. She didn't do anything for me. It's weird.
Oh wow.
I know. I think we're gonna disagree on this one. I found her found her weak, and I kept wanting more out of her. I thought at times there were moments, and particularly at the end when she actually goes through this clairvoyant moment, you know, that was cool, especially, you know, leading up to the wink. But there were other moments, I'll have to watch it again, Robert.
Well, you know, it's interesting because she wasn't in that many movies. I think she had a larger theater career. And I only remember her in another film with Dustin Hoffman that I believe that was one that she got an Academy Award for from the early 70s. But I found that she has like a real sense of humor. I mean, even that scene when she has that other client, but Bruce Dern wants to talk to her, and every now and then she has to keep making the noises and sounds of the other person. I laughed out loud, but she has a certain vulnerability and gentleness, but at the same time, you buy that she's, I mean, perhaps she has a lack of edge, you know, that maybe someone like Karen Black has, but I don't know. I just thought she was a lot of fun and really found the humor of it, and the timing too with her and Dern. I thought was great, but I can actually see why someone would. Did you feel that maybe that character needed a little more bite?
I don't know. You know, I agree with you. Their banter was fun. You know, it was really touching. Hitchcock's characters, the heroes always have to be put through the ringer, and when they come out of that, you know, near murder in the thriller comedy scene of the car careening down the road, that's, you know, straight out of
I love that
North by Northwest. You know, it's funny, scary, and Hitchcock is always able to do that. You know, suddenly you see their genuine love for each other when they come out of it. And so I agree with you about certain moments where I think she works well and plays well off of Bruce Dern. We just disagree.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I was actually surprised that he, like, you don't always know if these stories are true, but I don't know if you read this, but apparently he was not happy with Karen Black, and I was very surprised because I thought that she was perfect for that. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I didn't read up on that. You know, he's been quoted as saying that about, you know, any number of actors that he didn't want. What was did he want somebody else for Karen's part?
Well, he didn't mention. There isn't any mention of who he wanted, but apparently William Devane kept saying that he was throwing hints. He was throwing strong hints that he was going to cut a lot of Karen Black's scene. So I don't know if that was just maybe William Devane interpreted it wrong or God knows what. Yeah. But you know, you can't trust everything you read. But I was surprised because I thought she, you know, because she's such a good actor, but there's always something kind of, she's something scary about her, a real edge, let's put it that way, but also a real sweetness and lovable quality. But I thought she was really good. I do know that Pacino was who Hitchcock
That's
wanted.
right.
Yes, and I you know, Pacino's probably one of my favorite actors, and I really can't see him in this. I mean, I can't imagine him in this Hitchcock world at all. I mean, I could see Bruce Dern. You know, as you know, Bruce Dern was in Marnie. He was in a couple of his the Alfred Hitchcock Presents. But the story is that I'm sure you know is that Bruce Dern said, "Well, why did you want me for this?" And he said, "Because Pacino wanted $1 million." Right. You know, because at that time, as you know, he was the biggest star, pretty much the biggest star in Hollywood. So, but I don't know. I mean, could you have seen Pacino in this?
I couldn't, but you know, woulda, shoulda, coulda. It's hard to imagine. I think he was pretty happy though with Bruce
I think
Dern,
so.
because he also liked the fact that you didn't quite know what was going to happen, what was going to happen next. I also know that he asked Devane to think of William Powell.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you know, when you go back to the Thin Man series from the 30s and 40s, you know, this debonair, you know, very cool gentleman. And I think, you know, good for Devane. And I agree with you, you know, about him. I think he's been under the radar and was always a fun. Whenever something came on TV, I would watch Devane just because of his acting chops.
He's so interesting to watch. I mean, particularly in this film, he has the right amount of charm, but also the right amount of sinister nature. And again, that voice. I mean, in Marathon Man, he plays a similar kind of part as well.
Yes.
But I just thought he was excellent. That suspense moment you mentioned, I love that, because again, it goes back to the audience knows more than, as you know, the audience knows more than the characters. So when the couple, it was Barbara Harris and Dern, when they're going to meet Maloney at that diner, and the audience knows they're going to be killed, but they don't know that. And every time that door opens, he stretches the time out so beautifully. First a priest, it's a priest, of course, and kids, and then a woman. And then again, something's wrong with the car. And he just turns it into this slapstick. And she's falling on him. She just had a burger. She's feel like she's going to get sick. The car falls over, and it's just a shot of the foot on Bruce Dern's face. I just thought, I'm sure you read Hitchcock Truffaut, and anyone who knows the way he builds suspense is done masterfully with stretching of time, and of course it does make you go, oh no, don't do that, no, they're gonna kill you, blah blah blah, and I was really conscious of how I was feeling in those moments, and I thought, I can see how he knows how to manipulate the audience and pull you in and tell you basically how to feel in those moments. I mean, you mentioned that sequence. Is that a sequence you really like in this film?
Yeah, definitely. All you see of him cutting the brake lines is him wiping his hands.
That's right.
Leaving, and then all you see is the oil coming down. And Hitchcock, if he can, he gets the suspense into the audience's mind, and then he doesn't have to show us anything. We are active participants.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the his final MacGuffin, which is this combination of finding Eddie Shoebridge and the diamonds.
Right.
They're only there to drive the plot.
Exactly.
And they don't really mind. And so what does he do? He shows us early in the film, Arthur Adamson, Devane, Scotch taping the diamond into the chandelier,
right.
Shows us the chandelier every so often. Okay, but we're so fixated on the plot, we forget about the diamond.
Right.
And is Barbara Harris, is Blanche a psychic or not? We don't know, because she could have heard Adamson say, let's go get the new diamond for our chandelier, just as the shot is kicking in.
That's right.
So it could have been in her mind, and she's still groggy. And then, Bruce Dern says, "You're psychic." But we see, and we're just following her up the stairs, and then Hitchcock shows us the chandelier, and then we remember. We're so focused on the story.
Right.
And again, it's just brilliant use of manipulation. Of our thoughts. I totally agree with you. Those two scenes are fabulous.
I love that. And the wink at the end, what did you think that was about? Was that, it's sort of up to the audience, I imagine. She winks to the camera.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I've thought a lot about it, as have a lot of other people. And this is the only film Hitchcock made with more years in between films. His last film before this was in 72, Frenzy.
Yep.
And then 1976, he dies 4 years after this. It took him 4 years to get this film out. And I'm just thinking, he's exhausted. His wife dies, like sometime in there. He's very, very sick. He may know that this is his last film, and he's often broken the fourth wall. The argument between Adamson and Fran in the jewelry store are done straight to the camera, always breaking the fourth wall. You must do this. You must listen to me. And it's just staring. We're just staring right into each other's eyes.
Yeah.
And so he was more than comfortable doing that, breaking the fourth wall. and my guess, Robert, is that, you know, he may have been thinking, you know, this is it. This is my last time. How might I leave people's memory of me? Well, I'm going to have Barbara Harris wink as if she is me, and say and sum up all of my films. They're just movies. It's all entertainment. I hope you've enjoyed my 53 movies. That's what I'm sticking with, because that's the vibe. You know, and you and I, we spend more time with these films. It's like, yeah, that's possible.
Well, that's, you know, it's funny that you say that, because I also suspected it had something to do with a sort of reminding you that this is just an entertaining, a fun, tongue-in-cheek story, obviously with some questioning of characters' morals and things like that. Or if it has to do with Barbara Harris's character, she's always convincing people that she is a psychic, and then in that moment, she convinces Bruce Dern, because I hadn't even thought of that. She may have heard that conversation about where the diamonds, you know, were. So I think it's really, and he didn't often have a lot of ambiguity. So I thought it was interesting that he had an ambiguous moment there. But at the same time, throughout the film, it seemed as if Barbara Harris was bothered that she wasn't a real psychic. You know, she sort of convinced herself that she was sometimes, like, well, you know, the spirits came to Bruce Dern's like, what are you talking about? That's my research. I really appreciated that, because it was another layer to an insecurity in her that it's interesting, isn't it? It's
oh yeah, that's true. You know, especially right in the beginning. You know, okay, what kind of Hitchcock film are we going to have? I'm this time watching it. You know, Blanche is a medium with Julia Rainbird right in the beginning. I'm thinking, she's so full of shit. You know, it's all bullshit. Yeah. You know, and we know Hitchcock does it, I think, partly on purpose, to say, you know, that we're in a lighthearted comedy mode. You know,
I think so. Yeah.
It's not that serious. Although, like To Catch a Thief, there are some, you know, secondary, more serious issues. You know, and of course they've got John Williams as composer.
That's right.
You know, who's fresh off of Jaws from the year before. And right after the seance, Williams' playful harpsichord kicks in, you know, with a kind of, you know, Sherlock Holmes, the game's afoot, jingle, you know, and of course the pipe and everything. And so, you know, it's all kind of tongue in cheek. So I think that's also consistent with, you know, how is Hitchcock going to go out on his last film? I think it's appropriate. I think it's because
I agree.
You know, like our conference topic, you know, humor and comedy are not the first thing you think of with Hitchcock.
I know.
Love is not the first thing. Yeah, you know, it's like, but it's always there. You know.
Oh yeah.
Hitchcock's suspense would not be half as suspenseful if he didn't throw in those releases for us.
I agree, and I think it's perhaps sometimes I think, okay, why do people still talk about these movies so much? Because they're you know, they're very plot driven suspense stories, and he had some that were, you know, more complex. The ones that he actually usually didn't favor, like Rebecca or The Wrong Man, and even Under Capricorn and movies like that. So I keep thinking that these are such well-constructed movies, and there's so much fun, and he has all sorts of interesting things about morals and psychology and stuff like that. But why are we still talking about them? And I often wonder if it is that humor, the black. I mean, it's so many things, but I wonder if people are not as aware of the humor, even though they feel it. Because there's been other movies where someone's wrongfully accused. I don't think we talk about The Fugitive with Harrison Ford that much anymore. You know?
No.
but that was
true.
taken so seriously. And I think
yeah.
that's why maybe the edge is that these are just more of a roller coaster, you know?
Definitely. And he always used that as an example. You know, people go in a roller coaster or go in the ghost sideshow to be scared because they know that they're safe sitting in the audience, and they go home. But, you know, he grew up going to music halls and vaudeville, and he knew the power and importance of comedy as a way to leaven the proceedings. And so, you know, we forget about comedy because it's so natural for us to laugh, and he knew how to weave it into how to weave it into his melodramas. I also appreciate your comment about the complexities and depths of some of his lesser known films. I'm looking forward to Patricia White's discussion in the conference on Rebecca, because she just wrote this fabulous book, you know, that
I heard about that
with through the British Film Institute Classics. And you know, you also mentioned The Wrong Man. You know,
I love that movie.
Dense film, Under Capricorn. I just showed that again. You know,
another great one,
for my film club, and I think you're talking about it, right? And I can't wait for your presentation, because these are dense, tough films, and they're, you know, for real fans of the master, you know, those are the ones we're drawn to talking about now, because there's so much there that I think escaped a lot of critics.
No, I agree. And you know, it's interesting reading Hitchcock Truffaut. He was less interested in those movies, which, I mean, I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, just that they didn't go with the audience as much. Well, I think Rebecca did. I mean, that was an Oscar, but Oscar-winning film. But he, as he put it, they weren't quote unquote Hitchcock films. They weren't. I think he really liked the family plot, the 39 steps, those kind of the real fun kind of tongue-in-cheek suspense, Strangers on a Train, those kind of movies, Vertigo. That has more of a complex nature to it. But it's interesting to me. I guess that's just what he preferred. I mean, he's sort of he wouldn't have much to say about Rebecca, you know.
Well, I don't know. I think when he was frequently asked, you know, why he made these films, he said, "It's just entertainment. You know, I got to make a living. It's my job."
Right.
And he was back home eating his 12 steaks at 5 o'clock, and good wine. You know, I think there is an artist, you know, not hiding very, very far beneath his surface, and I think he was upset that some of those films weren't as well received. Like Rich and Strange was one of his favorite films. Yeah. And there's a lot in there, you know, about morals and about relationships and psychology.
Yeah. I agree.
So there's, you know, I think every so often he tried to make a more artistic film. Certainly Marnie is still argued over, and that could be one of his most personal, psychological, difficult films. And I think he tried hard, particularly by the 60s, to be more accepted among the artistic crowd with films like Marnie. So I think he was disappointed that he was pigeonholed. I
remember in the Hitchcock Truffaut documentary, he was saying maybe he should have experimented more with the form and done, you know, but I imagine, I think you nailed it on the head right there, when it's, you know, his job was to entertain, and that's what he would, he even says in Hitchcock Truffaut, if he was ever worried about something, he'd go back to what he knew would work.
He was the master of entertainment, not just suspense. Absolutely,
absolutely. The one thing I wanted to mention is one thing that he talks about with Truffaut is that he was constantly criticized for scenarios or things that would happen in his plots that weren't plausible, you know. And he hated that because he said it's not about, the suspense stories are not just about being realistic, and he's right. But at the same time, he would worry about, is this plot, am I going to be criticized for this? Is there anything in this story that popped out to you that where you go into your head and you're like, that seems pretty out there? I don't know. Was there any moments that stuck out to you in this one?
I'm sure I could find like half a dozen, Robert, but I'm so addicted and seduced by Hitchcock that I've let them go. You know, people bring this up as a valid argument because there are a lot of plot holes. You know, for example, you know, he brings up the, you know, killing Stevie and Sabotage. You know, he should never have done that because it was too realistic. Right. And when I get a lot of comments from my film club members who do point out, you know, the gaping holes in so many of them. I'm blanking on them now, but I agree that they're there. And my argument against that is that film is not realistic. Film is fiction, and it's not meant to follow waking logic. It's meant to be dream logic. And so I think that's the fair and valid argument against worrying about those plot holes. But you know, if you're a very rational person, it is sometimes hard to get past them. I don't know. Are you thinking of a particular moment in this film?
Well, for me, and I got confused a couple of times when they kidnapped the priest, Devane and Karen Black. I thought they were doing that because Devane knew that priest knew who he was. So because Dern was after him, I thought, oh, okay, so now they're going to get rid. So there's no trace to find him. And then I realized later, oh no, they were doing that as another ransom, and it was just a coincidence that Bruce Dern knew about that. This priest knew who Devane really was, and I was like, oh. And then I thought back to, you know, I think it helps so much if you're really interested in these movies to really read Hitchcock or a lot of the books. People have written these great books because he believed in coincidences, at least in storytelling. And that was the only thought I thought, well, come on. But at the same time, it doesn't matter because the stories move so fast and you do get invested in, again, as he said, his number one concern was that it was emotional. So if you stop to think about, hang on a second, you'll miss the rest of it. And I mean, yeah, it's far-fetched, but it is still, it's a little possible. You can't say that it wouldn't happen. But that was one thing. And I got confused because right after that, Bruce Dern, I don't know if this popped out to you, right after that happens, they talk about the kidnapping. They're reading in the papers and they say, oh yeah, well, they're going to get they want $1 million ransom. But maybe I misheard it because then later on they talk about a second jewel. Am I right, or I have that wrong? That the priest was for another jewel, I believe.
Yes, the priest was a trade-in for a second jewel. I think there may have been some gaps in the writing, you know. So I agree with you. You're smarter than I am though, because it took me 3 or 4 watchings. You know, you got it on your second one. So you're smarter than I am because
to be fair, I did pause a couple of times to say, hang on. Like if I was in a theater, it would have went over my head.
Could you pause that, please? I need to see that again.
Yeah, I've had to do that in a few of his films. North by Northwest is another one that even, you know, as you know, Cary Grant was like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, and of course, you talk about coincidence right from the start. He's mistaken for a non-existent person named George Kaplan. That's how the whole thing starts, you know?
Yeah.
And it's all coincidence. The first Hitchcock cleverly introduces us to the second couple because Bruce Dern, his cab driver, puts his foot on the brakes real quick because he almost hits Fran walking across the street.
That's right.
pure coincidence, which brings me back to Janet Leigh walking across the walkway in Psycho and being noticed. But here, you know, we wonder why we're following this woman all of a sudden.
That's right. Yeah, it goes into a whole other story, which then, of course, Strangers on a Train that crisscrossed, right?
Right. Yeah, there you go. Right. Sure. So, you know, it's wonderful how the logic is not truly plausible, but it goes back to actually something that I picked up in Aristotle, of all things, in his description of what makes a good drama. And I don't know if Hitchcock ever studied Aristotle, probably in his Jesuit days, but Aristotle said something like, it doesn't matter if something is true. What matters is whether it's let me see if I can get this straight, a possible implausibility,
right,
versus a probable possibility.
Yes.
So if it's possible and if it convinces you that it can happen, that makes good drama.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love the of course, you know, the moments of irony is that, you know, all Bruce Dern and Barbara Harris want to do is tell this guy
right.
that he's got all this money coming to him and that's it. But they think that, wait, these people must be onto us about what we're doing.
Right.
So all these, you know, trying to kill them off is, and again, this is, all these people want is money, and this money is there. That all, it's just a simple message, you know? And of course, once she gets the message, the priest falls out of the car and it's too late. Then now it's a whole other, it's almost like a whole other plot. It's a whole other story. I love that.
Again, that's coincidence. You know, Hitchcock suddenly, you know, we're starting to think, okay, now how will Adamson change his thinking? He's starting to think about this totally new situation. Hitchcock cuts to this close-up of the priest's frock hanging out of the door. More suspense.
Yeah.
That, you know, then she's shit out of luck.
Yeah. Then it was just, it's amazing in that one moment that how, because as the audience, I was relieved. I'm thinking, oh, okay, great. It's clear this up. Let's just move on.
and Hitchcock wants us to feel relieved. So we get a little, he gives us just enough relief. And before we can wallow in it, we're hooked again.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was really, really great. I kept thinking, I was thinking, you know, Karen, just leave that friggin' thing alone with the car. I'm like, just leave it. Because I don't think she would, Barbara Harris, I don't think she would have even noticed. But of course she opens the door and he falls out. Oh my God. But again, at the same time, it's black humor because I couldn't help but laugh when that happened. Yeah. And then when he hits her, I mean, that to me was one of the darkest moments in the movie. I just thought, wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. He really is. He's smooth and he's seductive and he's William Powell-esque, but he's also cruel.
Yeah.
And
he really violent. Reminds you that he's psychotic, you know, that he's
and
guy
Fran
who killed his step-parents, right? You know?
Right. And Karen Black's Fran wants nothing to do with murder. And so she has some good qualities too.
Yeah.
We're sort of, Hitchcock wants us to cheer her on and makes it ambivalent. Oh, you know, she's not completely evil. We can have some sympathy for that character. And we lose our sympathy for Devane's Adamson by then.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another, you know, as we mentioned, it's we have main characters that we forget that everybody in this story is actually a criminal. And I suppose you're sympathizing the most with Bruce Dern and Karen Black, Bruce Dern and Barbara Harris. And for me anyways, I was a little more hopeful for them, you know. You forget that, well, hang on a minute, these are con artists. These are, and he always had that, you know, you know, you're rooting for the wrong person, particularly when he would use POV, because now I'm in that person's eyes, and it might be the villain. So It's just, it's so clever. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy was just an incredible storyteller.
Yeah, so much fun. Right from the start, too. You know, my presentation is on the Pleasure Garden. And, you know, right from the start, he's working those POVs. He's manipulating our affinities with not just the protagonists, but multiple protagonists. And, you know, he allows us, he encourages us to feel the emotions of everybody at different times of the film. So again, how generous a director, an artist is that person who can do that for you, not just give you the information about the heroes, but make the heroes gray,
right,
and ambivalent, and, you know, move our identifications around to all of them so that we can experience each of their perspectives through different points of view. That to me is true generosity of spirit as an artist, and another reason why I'm drawn back to this guy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a good point, because they're so detailed that every time you go back, you see something.
We see things from Adamson's perspective. We see things from Fran's perspective. We see things even from Joseph Maloney's perspective. This despicable character, right? You know, we see Mrs. Maloney in that wonderful scene, you know, in the cemetery with Bruce Dern, you know, shot from bird's eye view, where he tracks her down, and he finally reveals that Shoebridge is Adamson. You know, even the smallest characters, Hitchcock allows us to be privy to what they're thinking for their short time on screen. It's great.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I wanted to ask, where's the best place for people to get your books on Hitchcock?
Oh gosh, you know, all three of them were through McFarland and Company out of Jefferson, North Carolina. But of course, the best deals are on Amazon.com.
Amazon? Okay, great.
And don't look at the first one. Look for the cheaper versions, because you know, look for because they'll throw absurd prices on all sorts of things right at the top of the screen. So scroll down to find the deals.
Okay, perfect. I'll find a link, and I'll put it in the description box below to check out those books. And of course, the Hitch Conference is October 1st to the 3rd, and you can get the tickets in the it's hitchcon.org, I believe. Is it?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Hitchcon.org.
And your presentation, to plug you, is on Saturday afternoon in the 3:30 to 5 p.m. panel with Joel and Christine French, who's working on a book. And then I look forward to your discussion on Under Capricorn, Robert.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do. I'm really looking forward to jumping back into that and really getting ready for it, because I thought it was a really, really great film. Well, thanks so much, Marc. I really appreciate you coming on, and this has been a really great talk, not just about the film, but really we went into all sorts of areas about the craftsmanship from Hitchcock, and this was a really, really unique, and I really appreciate that you took the time to come on today.
My pleasure, Robert. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And for those of you watching, if this is your first time on my podcast, please consider subscribing. You can click on the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You'll see it floating above my head right here to your top left. Just click on that, and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release a new video or when I go live. I want to thank everyone who is a subscriber on my Patreon membership. I actually have a section, a tier that is now dedicated to Hitchcock, and the Patreon link, if you want to sign up, is in the description box below. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.